Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome back to Mechabellum. Today's video is going to be all about Fang spawn fortresses. This is one of the easiest comps to play, as it is basically a one unit comp. Your fortresses are going to be doing everything. They're going to be spawning chaff, they're going to be dealing the damage, they're going to be the tank, they can even be the anti-air. But what do you need for it? Well, here's the setup that I recommend. You need the range in case you need to deal with something like Melter. It's a good scaling tech as well. Fang production, obviously, to produce the Fangs. Anti-air is going to be your counter to anything except Wraith, basically. And Barrier is a nice tech in the long run as well if you get more fortresses or you need to deal with something like fire as a ground effect. Anyway, let's get into this game and show you guys how we play this comp. Alright, here we are. Now, obviously, if you're playing this comp, you're planning to build fortresses. So, specialists like the giant spec that you can see right over there are going to be really useful. Another thing that will really allow you to kickstart this strat is something like the fortress drop that you can get sometimes on round 3. Other resource specialists like quick supply or supply spec can also allow you to get into this a bit faster than usual. So those are also nice, and obviously things like Typhoon spec, Farseer spec, Rhino spec, you can sell that unit and get a bit of cash to unlock the unit that you want. Here we're playing with Fang Steel Ball. The nice thing about this specialist this unit pack rather, is that it has very high hit points. So here I'm starting at 5400, whereas my opponent with the supply specialist Stormcaller Arclight pack has only got 3700. So I can allow myself here to take a couple hits during the early game and still be completely fine, which is very nice. The reason why this pack is so low is because Fang Steel Ball is a bit of an awkward matchup, or a bit of an awkward match between the two units. As Fangs are very slow and Steel Balls are quite fast, so it's kind of hard to make sure that both of them coordinate. The best way to play it, in my opinion, is just to play aggro, and I will play the Fangs basically where I would normally play something like Crawler. 2 Arclights in front of the Steel Balls, and this honestly works pretty well. I don't think it's easy to play this setup in Standard, however, and keep in mind the comp that I'm recommending is more of a short range composition, so it's either best played on aggro or in defense if your opponent is pushing into you. It doesn't necessarily like long range engagements all that much because it'll become more vulnerable to things like fire callers and that type of thing. You can see here the Steel Balls are doing a decent job managing to take that tower there. Question is, will this Steel Ball survive? It will, and I think because of that it might be able to get underneath these Stormcallers. Yes, indeed. So now it is inside of the dead zone, which means these Stormcallers will not be able to kill it. And it even manages to level up. We deal some damage on round 1. Perfect, right? I didn't even necessarily need to win the first round. I have these hit points to spend. I think my plan going forward is going to be strong in the mid to late game. So the fact that we're already mitigating damage here or not even taking anything whatsoever is fantastic. My opponent here decides to pick up the improved firepower control system, and for me, none of these look too tempting. I don't really need improved firepower control system on fortresses. Shield airdrop is fine, but he does have the Stormcallers, so I was like, it's probably going to break. I think I'd rather just skip. What skipping me allows me to do as well is still level this up and then be able to unlock a new unit like Phoenix and still get another chaff on the board as well, or an Arclight, as I will be doing here. So I decide to pick up a Phoenix. My opponent goes straight for the Hacker with the improved firepower control system, which is very powerful against something like Steel Ball, especially when my Fangs can't really get in front of them. But lucky for us, he didn't buy any anti-air because of that. And so, even though we are going to lose this round on the ground, we're going to win it by default thanks to these Phoenixes who should be able to clean up everything. And so again, we get a round here where we are simply not taking any damage, even though we're still in the process of working towards being able to purchase those giants, right? It's still a board that's in the process of being set up. We can speed things up here. Phoenixes will farm up everything. We'll be able to get a level if I decide to take it. And so that's another very good round for me. It's also a reason why I picked Phoenix. Goes well with arc lights. And when you go Fortress early, it can be nice to at least have some anti-air to be able to deal with, well, potential air units from your opponent, so as not to lose a round by default, like you just saw. Opponent here goes for Marksman from the free unit drop. For me, it's either a sell, but honestly, the Wasps look quite tempting. My opponent here probably won't have a good response into it. Nothing like Mustang has been offered. Maybe he could buy them, but I think either way, it's a pretty valuable pack. 400 in resources, and it should provide a little bit more tempo. I'm deciding to sell out of the steel balls there because it was just feeding the hacker, and I don't need them as part of my comp. I just level them to try and see if that would be annoying, but he instantly answers with hacker, so instead, let's try and work towards Fortress. Round 3, I already unlocked it because of the sell there. We actually have 800 resources available, which means that I can buy 2 of them. And this is something that I really like doing. If, or as soon as you're going to show that you're going to be building fortresses, I like to start with at least 2 on that turn. It gives your opponent less time to prepare, because when they see the fortresses, there will already be 2 of them. Next turn, there will likely be 3 in attack, and that allows you to kind of snowball this, right? So what I'm doing here is 2 fortresses on the right side. I know that I'm going to get hit here by the Stormcallers, but I don't really care too much. I use the Wasps in front to try and, well, function as some type of chaff. For the Marksman, for instance, it works pretty nicely. If my opponent were to buy the Melter from that unit drop, it also would have functioned as chaff. Yeah, we can just walk in here, right? I don't really care too much about those Stormcallers. They're fortresses. They should be tanky enough. And we just move in and get that tower. Something that's going to be important as soon as you start playing this is temp speed on the tower. It's your best friend. Here, obviously, round 3, it's really early, so the fact that I already have 2 fortresses on the board at that point is more than I could ask for. But on any given round afterwards, you pretty much want to always click temp speed. It's going to help your fortresses move in faster, your fangs as well, and really threaten those towers. Fortress here does come out victorious with a sliver of hit points, gets the level as well, but that's something you're not really going to need with this comp. This comp will rely on numbers rather than levels. Round number 4, additional deployment slot there shows up. Also a pretty decent giant item in Mustang production. Quick teleports can be good too. All of those are fine to pick up. I decided to go for additional deployment, so does my opponent. And my opponent here, having to deal with multiple things at once, decides to click anti-air on his arc lights to try and deal with the Wasps, which I think is a big mistake. I think he should have just bought Fangs, but I can get that it's hard for him here to find a solution, because he has, well, no Fangs, and he kind of needs something like a Melter as well. Instead, however, you can see he has no money left, sells the hacker, transitions the item onto the Stormcallers, hoping that that's going to be enough. But in the meantime, I'm already setting up. Fangs here in front of those fortresses. Another fortress picked up on the left side to start the pressure over there, and we get Fang spawn immediately. I have 100 left, and I decide to take the temp speed. So here I am not taking the additional deployment. Actually, I'm moving the fortresses to the right side. Also missiling the left. I didn't go for deployment there because, again, the temp speed is really important, and I'm choosing to keep going on the right side here with the Fang production, hoping that with the additional forts we can just produce so much chaff on the right side that will come out ahead. Fortress is able to kill most of the units on the right side. We do get debuffed, however. A couple crawlers here running towards my tower. Fortress gets the debuff though, and I think it should be able to get rid of every remaining unit. We do get debuffed, but with only 1 marksman and an arclight remaining, that shouldn't be enough. So with the help of the Fangs, we kill the crawlers, and we're going to take out that arclight as well. More damage dealt. My opponent's already sub 3k hit points. And here we get a nice giant item. Barrier shows up. I decide to pick it up. My opponent goes for the Overlord drop. Very expensive on round 5. And yeah, because I'm expecting here to go into something like Fang production and then range, something of the sorts, I'm willing to pick up the barrier. It's not too expensive, 150. And it'll provide good coverage for the right side. Opponent unlocks Melter and buys it, but doesn't have the money for range just yet. We obviously get the temp speed, and now we make the play that I was debating whether or not to make last time, and putting 2 fortresses on the left side with the Fang in front to start running in over here. Overload drop, I can't really do too much about. I put some Fangs behind the tower, but this is hard to defend, and I don't really care about it, to be honest. If my opponent wants to utilize 300 resources or so for this, I'm fine. I'll just take the economic victory, I guess, in the long run. I have 5,400 hit points. Like, that's not worth defending, in my opinion. It does mean that my opponent will manage to win, and it buys him a turn to probably get the range or so on the melters, or a different tech. Pretty big round. Left side wins as well because of that. Stormcallers there doing a great job alongside the marksman and the arc lights. Another round though. Opponent here gets the laser sight. Nothing here looks too good for me. I could take the photon coating if I want, but here we're just greeding, right? We want to get as much on the board as possible. Round 6, it's time for the next upgrade, and this is often going to be how you're going to play this. You go Fortress, next turn you get another Fortress with Fang spawn, and then you try and work your way towards Shielded Fang. Try and drop Fortresses every round though, so here, last turn, we didn't really click a tech. We went Barrier, 2 more Forts, and now we have 7 Fortresses on the board with the Shielded Fangs, and this is a big power spike, right? Opponent only has arc lights, so these Fangs basically have double value and will be much more annoying to take out. I decided to buy more Wasps, not buy more, I decided to sell out of the Wasps. The Phoenixes also have been sold, and this is what I mean by a 1-unit comp. Really, it's just Fortresses and Fangs. The Fangs function as a shield to make sure that we don't get insta-locked. And I've got a couple arc lights, but I started with those. Opponent goes for crawlers on the side though. Goes temp speed as well on the tower to make them run in faster. But you can see that we've already locked onto that melter there on the left. And so, even though there's going to be crawlers on our tower, we get the debuff first. And with that, we might be able to kill this level 2 melter before the debuff goes. Yes, we are. So the flank there, not successful whatsoever, and now we've got 6 fortresses left alive plus a bunch of fangs. That's a lot of damage. And you can see how overwhelming this comp gets, right? There's just so much chaff to deal with that you need a very specific setup. The counter to this is much more complicated than the comp itself, which is just fortresses with the shielded fangs. Now here I decided to pick up Raiden because it's free, it's easy to sell, but also it's a decent anti-air unit. I was a bit worried my opponent might take Raiden just to try and cheese around, so I was like, you know, it can't hurt just to put it on the board and at least have some security in terms of anti-air for bigger targets, because I can click AA next turn, but, you know, if we can win this turn and not get air cheesed by something tanky, then that's probably better. Opponent surprisingly goes for the Scorpions. I thought they would go for the Fire Badgers. I think Fire Badger ranged Napalm maybe could have been a decent decision for them. They are loaning, and now I managed to get another tech, which is going to be Barrier. I decided to click Barrier because of the EMP on the melting point. This will break the shield, obviously, but I have a whole bunch of fortresses next to one another, so some of them should remain alive. And it also protects me somewhat from an oil play, or yeah, something like the napalm from the Fire Badgers. Temp speed, again, important. We're loaning. Temp range. You can see that I am pairing these fortresses up basically next to one another. That's to make sure that they help each other out. It also makes sure that they can chaff clear a little bit better with all the fangs spawning next to one another. And yeah, now we're just covering the entire board. One fortress in the middle to try and annoy these guys. More fortresses all the way on the outside. And you can see here, well, actually the EMP there getting way more value than I thought it would. breaking all 4 shields, but at the bare minimum, it is protecting these fortresses from getting EMP'd, at least for the most part. Range also a tech here that could have been good. Opponent goes for the energy absorption on the melters, which is doing a great job on the left. On the right side, though, we still have too many fangs left alive on the ground, and so we will be able to take out that melter. Now we're starting to walk in. The Raiden kind of passively dealing damage. It is top on damage, mind you, so I'm not too unhappy about keeping that on the board. And here we go. One fortress will end up biting the dust, but the melter doesn't find a good target to lock onto anymore. And with that, it's going to be all she wrote on round 7 as we take out our opponent. This was against a high MMR opponent as well. Ibavan is a incredibly solid player, sitting at over 2.2k MMR most of the time. And yeah, it's just a testament to how oppressive this comp can get. It gets out of control very, very quickly if your opponent doesn't get the right answers. Something like early Mustangs, maybe to deal with the Fangs, but even those sometimes can get run over. And in my experience, the best counter to it just ends up being some type of fire. But you need to get a lot of units on the board to make sure that you have a consistent puddle of fire where all the Fangs are running through. And if you don't, well, it tends to just be too late. You can also try and put something really big in front of the fortresses. That's something that has happened to me before. In that case, remember to click something like Ignite on the Fangs if your opponent tries to go for a factory. That can be really useful. And yeah, this deals with basically any comp. The only thing you might lose to is like a regen Wraith. But all other air units generally will die to just anti-air barrage and spamming more fortresses. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. Round 3 or round 4, try to get those 2 fortresses. Next round, another fort, Fang spawn. Make sure to click your temp range. And then depending on what you need, your second tech might be AA if your opponent has a lot of air units. It might be range if you feel like you're in no hurry. It might be barrier if you need to protect your units, especially from things like fire. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Works great with giant spec. Works great with other resource specs. If you get the round 3 fortress drop, you can immediately go for this on round 3. And yeah, remember to pair up your fortresses. You can even build them all on one line if you want. Try and pressure both towers, but that's pretty much all I have to say. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down below what you think of this comp. If you faced it before, if you played it before, has it caused trouble for you in your games? Let me know. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please do consider subscribing. And if you want to see me playing live, check me out on Twitch. And with that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.